Hello, everybody, and welcome. The first in our series of the North American Customer Centricity Awards webinars. Thank you very much to all of our guests and to our speakers for taking the time out to speak today. The first of our topics is innovative approaches you are taking regarding CX within your organization. Just to give you a brief intro, this series, as I mentioned, is part of the North American Customer Centricity Awards. This event will be taking place in Dallas in June this year, and some of the key dates are listed on your screen, with the entry deadline coming out later this month. And there's a host of events taking place throughout the week of the 22nd to the 25th of June, with customer experience masterclasses, conference, and also the awards final and ceremony. So any information you'd like on this afterwards, please feel free to get in touch. I'd like to introduce our speakers for today. So first of all, Mark Michelson, who's the CEO and producer of CX Talk. This is a series of events that are run across the United States, with the next one coming up in Dallas as well in March. I'd also like to introduce Alice Ferguson, who's the Vice President Customer Experience of Workhuman, and to introduce Michael Phelan, who is the founder and principal of Go-to-Market Pros. So welcome to each of you. So for the first question of today, who would like to go first? I don't want to pick on anybody, but anyone willing to go first?
I'm happy to go first.
Okay, thanks, Alice.
Yeah,
okay.
So yes, this is Alice, and so I'm very honored to be on this panel with such amazing experts. Say that first, and they're probably better exposed and positioned to talk about maybe the innovations, but I can talk about maybe a couple of trends that I'm seeing, and really just three. So one, I'm seeing the trend of spreading realization that companies can no longer compete solely on brand, product, and price, and that the entire experience really does matter and deserves intentional focus. So I'm just seeing that really spreading out there today. Two, I think that I'm also seeing it's no longer that you're just competing against your direct competitors from an experience perspective. It feels like today you're competing against the very best experience that anyone has had in either their consumer-driven or their business life. And that provides really sort of a high bar that your customers are measuring you against for a start, but also interesting challenges that go along with that. And then the third thing is just the approach that companies are taking to their CX strategies or initiatives. So I think that there was a time where it was all about customer experience, and we were all focused simply on the customer experience. Then I feel as if we've evolved to see, okay, so if we're focused on the customer experience, the employees matter, because it's the employees that are actually delivering that experience. So it seems to have evolved, and I've seen some more forward-thinking companies call their approaches human experience. And I think for us at Workhuman, it's kind of broader still, because we feel that anybody that is interacting or engaging with our company is taking away an impression of that experience, be it from one interaction with one individual or multiple touch points, multiple individuals. So our strategy, our approach is, we're calling it the Workhuman experience, and it's encompassing future customers, current customers, our employees at Workhuman, as well as our partners. So supply chain, consultants, anybody that is engaging with Workhuman, we want that strategy to be an all-encompassing strategy. So everybody is receiving that high level of consistent and intentional experience. So I think just for me, those are sort of three trends that I'm seeing today.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Alice. Mark or Michael, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, this is Michael here. I'll jump in. I've recently done a lot of work in terms of the retail and e-commerce space, which is kind of a fascinating space to look at from a customer centricity point of view. And a couple of things come out of that that's really important. Is they're struggling really to define what exactly customer centricity is and what it means. So it's really important for companies to be very clear about what it means, very clear about how to measure it. At the very minimum, they have to put the customer at the center of the organization and view everything as kind of driving to support that customer. And that means that they need to understand and have a single view of that customer. That means they need to be able to understand every way that customer engages with the brand across all channels. And they need to understand what that customer wants and how to deliver it. Traditionally, the structure of many companies has not really facilitated that and has made it actually more complex. So what's happening is a lot of companies are trying to overlay some form of customer centricity initiative over an organization that's not set up to deliver well on customer centricity. So for example, there are many channels that one can interact with a major retailer, and many different ways you can interact, whether it's online, buy online, pick up in store, go to store, order via mobile app. There's lots of different ways, lots of different information. And unless the retailer says fundamentally, we're going to put this customer in the center of the organization, have a more holistic view of that, make sure our data is fully integrated, our insights, make sure it's forward driven, that we can anticipate what this customer wants at any moment in their journey and what they're going to need going forward. So there are some companies that excel in this space. Sephora is one, and there are some companies that do really badly in this space, and many of them are under financial pressure. Organizations such as Sears, for example. So customer centricity definitely does tie into growth, and it does tie into innovation, but you just can't overlay something on your organization and expect things to change. The leaders really are fundamentally creating a new type of organization with the customer at the center, with data at the center, with agile thinking and fast moves. So that's the biggest innovation I see is creating an organization that's designed to support customer centricity rather than just slap it on top of the organization and hope things will change.
Absolutely. No, thank you very much for that, Michael. Mark, would you like to add anything to that, or?
Yeah, I think the idea of innovation, really, a lot of that comes down to what types of platforms have come around to facilitate a lot of the interaction. And so versus just an innovative idea or thought within a company, within certain cultures that have been developed around the idea of customer centricity. In the States here, we have Chick-fil-A, which is a chicken a fast food place. They hire the right people. They have a very rigorous hiring process, and they train people not necessarily how to perform perfunctory skills, but really going down to the idea of being empathetic and caring towards others, which is, again, I don't know if that's innovation so much as it is a cultural viewpoint. Same thing with Southwest Airlines. Their culture is just so different from, say, Delta or any of the other airlines out there. And that really comes down to, again, from both a hiring perspective as well as how they communicate internally with their own employees. But as far as innovation goes, I think, a lot of that tends to be technology that supports interactions within customers and interactions with employees. And there's a lot of companies that are out there trying to adopt these different platforms, and there's some really good platforms out there. The idea of that innovation is it ties together a lot of the different customer history and their customer preferences and puts it at the fingertips of the people who are serving those customers.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Mark. So that leads us on to our next question. I think Michael and Mark certainly touched upon that. So certain companies, but any industries in particular that are leaders when it comes to CX innovation? Would anyone like to take that forward?
I'll pick up this one first this time.
Yeah.
The insurance industry seems to have really taken a leap in that, as well as banking. Banking and insurance both have typically not been the most customer-centric, and I'm finding they're more and more becoming that way by putting a lot of the tools and a lot of the things in people's hands. I mean, I remember when the first ATM came out, everyone was really, didn't know how to use it, was against it and everything. And nowadays, I can deposit checks on my phone. So I find a lot of that within the banking and insurance industries has really taken leaps forward in the area of customer centricity and innovation.
Brilliant. Alice or Michael, anything to add to that?
This is Michael. It's interesting. A company like Zappos, I think, it was really interesting. I mean, I came out of a world where I worked at Reebok, and Zappos first came out. The concept of how can you have something that people try on shoes typically in a store, go e-commerce when it's so personal, but they were able to bring technology to the bear to allow people to very easily ship 4 or 5 pairs of shoes, pick the one you want and ship them back. But they became famous for customer centricity. And this is an interesting learning I've had in my study, is that companies that are really customer centric, they just get it, do it. They don't have to have an algorithm and something proven out before they move forward. So one of the famous things that Zappos did was they would stay on the phone for as long as the customer wanted to be on the phone. And in one famous incident, they were on the phone for 8 hours with an elder lady, and halfway through the call, they asked her if she wanted pizza and ordered pizza for her. And it's just that they care so much about the customer. They fundamentally do the right thing. It's all about customer service. It's all about customer support. It's in their DNA. It's in their culture. It's in the leadership. So companies like that. And the other one, of course, is Amazon in many ways, driving 2-day delivery, 1-day delivery, and making returns really easy through go to Kohl's and return through Kohl's. Amazon is very, very innovative on getting products to people really fast, but also on allowing them to return them very efficiently, which traditionally has been a big problem for a lot of companies. It's kind of like riding a bike. They're very good at shipping products, but they can't go in reverse. So Amazon and Zappos are 2 very good examples.
Yeah,
Excellent.
and I think just to add on to that, 2 things. I think, Michael, what you just said, having the customer at the center and that being a mindset, I think is critical, because the key is to not have to script the how-to in any situation, but to have that mindset, to hire people with a heart for service and to ensure that they have clear understanding of the experience that you would like them to deliver, and then empowering them to do that. That's what allowed that person that you were mentioning to spend 8 hours on the phone and order pizza. No one told them that was the right thing to do. They just saw this was the right thing to do to deliver the best experience in this particular situation. So I do agree, Amazon is amazing at that. I think, Uber and Lyft, I mean, honestly, like, no one's going to have to ever wait for a taxi out in the snow or rain ever again, which is a wonderful thing. That's also taken that industry, that's disrupted that whole industry, as has Netflix. I think, who was it? The CEO, Reed Hastings, came up with that idea because he got hit with a blockbuster charge and was like, this is ridiculous. And then here came Netflix. And so I think these are innovations that just totally deal with broken experiences and disrupt the entire industry. And then obviously Disney. Disney is my ultimate favorite because it is part of their DNA, similar to Ritz-Carlton. This is how the employees live their day-to-day, is to deliver upon those experience goals of those companies. And I would aspire for our organization to get to that level.
Absolutely. And I suppose just to add to my thoughts for Amazon in particular, I suppose that's one of the reasons why it's been able to expand into so many different products and types and industries, because it's always had customer centricity at the heart. So I believe that is the core as to why they've been so successful. So certainly agree with all of you.
So, Mark, one thing to add to that on Amazon, which is interesting, and this may seem hokey, but one of the things that they do is they have a chair in a meeting, in a meeting that's designed around a new initiative or a change, and there's always an empty chair, and it's the customer's chair, and you have to nearly talk to the chair, or everyone will say, well, what would our customers think about that? If our customer was in the room, would they agree with this initiative? Is this in their interest, or are we just talking to ourselves? But they really force the dialogue and discussion either by some kind of prop or by some kind of mandate to say, is this really in the interest of customers? I remember when I was at Staples and I was heading up their B2B marketing, and Amazon was driving 2-day delivery. Amazon were very customer focused because people wanted 2-day delivery. Staples' approach to that at the time was they wanted to convince the customers that they didn't need 2-day delivery. They wanted them to convince them to order when it's convenient for Staples. So they didn't want them to order on a Monday. They didn't want them to order on a Friday. So while Staples was trying to change the way orders were being submitted and the time frame to match their back-end operational savings, Amazon had moved to, we're going to go to 2-day delivery. Yes, it's more expensive. Yes, it's less profitable, but customers wanted. So you see the difference between a very traditional supply chain oriented company that's trying to fight change and that's trying to conform the customer to their operations versus a customer centric company that's doing the right thing, even if it costs more money, even if it's less profitable.
Absolutely. That's a very good example as well. Thanks for that, Michael. Okay, and on to the next question. So what are the biggest barriers internally for creating an experience-driven culture? Is there anyone who would like to take this first?
I'm happy to take that,
Okay.
if you like. So I think for me, there's several, but let's boil it down to 3. So first of all, I think that there has to be the desire, and you have to acknowledge that you do want to put the customer at the center and have a desire to differentiate on experience. I think that has to be in place. And if it's not, you cannot succeed. I think it's critically important that your executive team, your C-suite are 100% on board. This is not a quick fix. This isn't an initiative. This is a multi-year cross-functional journey that touches every single part of the organization. So I think it is absolutely critical that all those leaders that are responsible for delivering against those experience goals, when you bubble up where there's technologies or processes that are not aligning with your business, with your experience goals, or there's things that you need to fix around your customer experience, there's folks from across the business that are going to need to be in lockstep to solve for that. So I think that is an absolutely critical need. And the third is your people. You have to have all your people delivering this incredible experience. So, to figure out a way to inspire them to want to get behind your experience goals, to empower them to spot the opportunities, like you were saying earlier, Michael, and then to support them in doing so, to trial things, to do things differently, and to create those human moments that matter, that will have profound impacts on those customers. I think those are the 3 things that if they're not in place, they could be huge barriers to your success.
Thanks, Alice. Michael, would you like to add?
Yeah, I would agree.
Mark.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Largely the mindset these days around proving ROI and having enough, I guess, courage to allow a CX program to be implemented without trying to judge ROI the first week. This kind of shift from sales-driven, product-driven, et cetera, to more focus on the customer, it doesn't happen overnight. And I've seen a lot of companies just either cancel programs or get rid of CX teams because it's not happening fast enough. So I think that the mindset and or the expectation for delivering a return on investment and understanding how that affects loyalty is probably one of the biggest barriers in a business world where improve the minute is often the order of the day. In the world of customer centricity, it's make my life better, and whatever that takes a little bit longer, it's not always going to show that ROI immediately.
So this is Michael here. Building on what you're saying, Mark, I think that's a great, at one level you say we should all have ROIs and benchmarks and goals, and we should predict everything based on what's going to happen before we do anything. That's the kind of financial side. At another level, customer-centric companies just make it happen. They do it. They certainly measure it, but they're more inclined to measure it after it's happened rather than try and predict it beforehand. So a good example of that is in the world of retail, brick and mortar, for example, and online, when they make a change, and a huge change that happened in the retail world was buy online, pick up in store. And some companies really got this and they went all out on it. Kohl's is an example. Other companies decided, well, let's test it in 2 or 3 stores, see how it goes. If it's a huge takeoff, we'll modify it. So while some companies get it and they've charged ahead, and by the way, buy online, pick up in store has been a phenomenal initiative, and the companies that move first and fastest and biggest are really dominating that world. The other ones that did a small little test, in probably 95% of cases, the tests never work because they're underscaled and undersupported. So what you do is you take a brilliant idea, you put it in a test that's destined to failure, it fails, and meanwhile your competitors are driving ahead. So I think that there has to be a balance for, we know this is the right thing for our customer. And incidentally, it's interesting, Gen Z love buy online and pick up in store. And the reason why Gen Z loves it is because next day delivery is not fast enough for them. Same day delivery is not fast enough for them. So ironically, stores like Kohl's can get the product you can buy online and drive to a store and pick it up in an hour. So it's actually even faster than Amazon. And when they go in store, they buy other stuff. So I think that's a big factor. And I wanted to go back to something that Alice kind of touched on as well. And that's kind of really understanding your customer experience. From working with a lot of companies, I rarely see them do a complete side-by-side analysis of their customer experience. I did this once for AT&T and for Comcast on a remote tech service that they had. And initially, what we did was we took the exact experience for Comcast side by side with the exact experience for Staples, or not for AT&T, and we compared them. We showed, this is what your customer is going through. This is the video. This is their experience. This is what's happening. And sometimes by doing that externally, you really showcase that. A lot of people sit in these companies. They hear a lot of data. They've never actually bought the product themselves. They've never actually sat side by side with a customer. They've never looked at the experience. And if you're not willing to do that independently, without ego, without arrogance, without judgment, if you're not willing to say, listen, guys, this is exactly what our customers are going through, and let's really make that much better. Let's make it much better than our competitors. If you're not doing that from the outside in, then you probably have a lot of internal bias. And if you have a lot of internal bias, then you're really not customer centric. So I think companies need to make sure that what they're looking at is really real, and what they're looking at is not is done outside. Nearly somebody has to say, you know what, I'm going to talk to a bunch of customers. I'm going to do a bunch of stuff, and I'm going to present that back to you, and you're going to look at it, and we're going to kind of figure out how to improve it. Because a lot of times, until you really put that side by side comparison, people really don't get it.
Yeah.
Yep, I love that. Yep, you're absolutely right.
Definitely. I'll just add a anecdote. One of the customer experience specialists who I admire, won't name any names, he worked for a company, a huge listed company, and he got sick of the finance department and the leadership asking him what was the ROI. So going back to your point, Mark, what is the ROI of the CX projects, initiatives, campaigns that you've got running? And after 3 or 4 of these questions in the board meetings, he turned around and asked what the return on investment of the finance department was, which I think is quite an interesting way of looking at it. But anyway, yeah. So the final question, and I guess some of these are reverses of of what the barriers are, but there is no silver bullet, which I think we can all agree. All the organizations are out there are different. But if you were to say from your experience, what are the top 3 things that need to be in place or are most crucial in delivering an experience-driven culture? And who would like to go first for that one?
I'll go if you like.
Yeah.
So just this exactly the reverse. You need a clear strategy. You need to have the intent, the desire, and you need to articulate what your experience goals are. What is it that you wish your organization to deliver at every single touch point, every single engagement, every single time? And once you have that and you've decided upon what that is, you need to articulate that to your population, because every person in your organization is a critical piece in the puzzle to deliver a successful experience. And a few missing puzzle pieces is going to create a disastrous impact, because it just takes one non-consistent interaction to dissuade that entire impression of that experience. So I think it's critical to articulate, empower your people, and support them in trialing things that support those business goals. As I think it was Michael that was saying, you shouldn't be afraid to try and risk and try things that maybe you think are the right thing to do to deliver the experience goals. You might find that that's something that can become systematized because it works so well. So I think that is a critical step, and to measure the impact, obviously from both the lens of the business, how is this move to delivering a differentiated experience impacting your business, but how is that also impacting the experience? So if you are assessing the experience from the customer's lens and you are scoring yourself as to where you are today, to continue to do that and understand where your greatest opportunities are. I think just from personal experience, we're quite new on this journey here at Workhuman. So we've been having a baptism by fire, as it were, on the learning front of what to do and how to do it. I think the culture of who we are as an organization has set us in an incredibly powerful position, because we hire those kinds of individuals that are human-centric just because of the products and services we have. But still, mapping the journey and looking through that customer lens and then validating that with customers, you have to be comfortable getting uncomfortable, and hearing the truth of, okay, this is an opportunity. We thought this was going really well, but apparently not, or this is an experience where maybe your processes and your technologies are rubbing against those experience goals. So I think, having clear metrics that measure both the customer lens and the business goals that you have for your experience and the impact that you think you can deliver to your business, and having everyone recognize that this isn't just something that's going to happen overnight. We're going to move from where we are now to intentional, to differentiated in a systematic way. And there's going to be a methodology and business processes that need to support that. You need to put the customer at the center, and everyone needs to be in lockstep if we are to move forward with those goals. So those would be sort of the things that I think are most critical. I know that was a lot.
Thanks very much, Alice. That's great. So Mark or Michael?
Yeah, this is Michael. So I'd add kind of data strategy. I forget who recently said data is the new oil, and so data has to be at the center of everything we do. We have to be, not data in an anonymous way, but data plus insights plus actionable change, because we're living in a very dynamic world. All the competitors are changing, everything's changing. So we need to be incredibly tuned into, what our customers are doing, what they want. We need to centralize all that data and centralize the intelligence and actions from that. A lot of people have data, but it's all over the place. They don't know what it means. They can't interpret it. They can't action it. So the very sophisticated companies, have data at the center of their organization, and they're challenging themselves to say, is this what our customers want? So I think data is really, really important. The other thing I will say is that we talked a little bit about the human dimension, but so much of sales and marketing has come in-house. So much of it is behind these walls. So much of it has been automated. So while data and insights are great, you want to really kind of remember that, that customers are people, And buying is driven as much by emotional decisions as rational decisions. In fact, many people think that you buy on emotion and justify on rationality, but we need to understand that, there's relationships involved. We need to understand the customer. We need to build loyalty and trust with the customer. So put data at the center, but keep everything from the perspective of, people are buying, and let's really relate to them. I think Alice mentioned empathy. I think that's very important. You got to have empathy for the customer. So I would say data and empathy are very important to be centralized.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say it really starts at the top. You have to have a CEO who has a vision and commitment to make it work. If you don't have the buy-in of the very top office, it's not really going to go very far. And that really sort of expands down into having a really clearly defined mission and approach to how the company wants to handle their customers. For instance, Ritz-Carlton for many years, they had these little pocket cards that every employee had. Their basic philosophy was, we are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. And there was another 20 or so points on there about that. But that buy-in to the mission and the culture is critical, because if it starts with the top brass, then it all filters its way down. You see that with almost every good, successful company, that there is leadership that supports and believes in it. And that in turn sort of defines all the other KPIs or key areas of that we need to measure performance. I've seen so many companies measure things that don't matter to customers. For instance, I go grocery shop every week, right? Everyone does. And yet, they have an NPS score for Kroger. How likely are you going to be to recommend this Kroger to someone else? Well, not very likely, because I don't normally go around recommending grocery stores in my everyday conversations. And I think that's really true in particular. A lot of these NPS scores are just kind of, not necessarily measuring what matters. It's important to ask the qualitative questions around that as well. So you give it a score, then what can we do better? How are we doing? How can we do better? And really listening to the answers, not trying to put them into some kind of bucket. So those are my areas of what I think needs to be in place to deliver an experience-driven culture.
So can I just add to that real quick?
Yes, of course.
You mentioned the Ritz-Carlton. I'll just tell you a funny story. When I was looking at how do we do this? How do we bring this to life at Workhuman? And I had heard all about the Ritz-Carlton and their credo, as you mentioned, and the little pocket card, and that everybody knew it. And I'd experienced the Ritz-Carlton a couple of times myself and actually saw that happening. And I thought, how real is this? Do they really, does everybody really know about it? So I just wandered into the Boston Ritz-Carlton, and I just picked some person randomly and said, hey, talk to me about your credo. Do you know what it is? How important is it to you in your day today? And I was blown away. This person, could have been anybody, said, we know all about it. We use it to hire people. Every new person that is entering the Ritz-Carlton goes through a totally experiential workshop-driven hiring onboarding process, whereby it's brought to life for each and every one of us. It's part of our day-to-day. We get funding, up to a certain value. If we see an opportunity to make something right in the moment, we can go and do that. And we're really empowered to deliver. And I was like, wow, okay. So the Ritz-Carlton have got it right. There's something to kind of look at there and be inspired by as an organization, looking to do this. So yeah, that was just a funny story I thought I'd share.
So it is real then, in that case. That's good.
It's part of the DNA, yeah. And that's what you need to have it be.
Absolutely. And
this is Michael here. Just one thing on love the Ritz-Carlton story, and I think that's so important. Is a lot of companies have signs up on the wall about how important the customer is and so forth and so on. But then the minute you engage with them, you realize that they're just viewing you as a transaction and cost, and they want to kind of move you along as fast as possible. But it being, real is important. And building on something that Mark just said, it's very interesting. A lot of companies do measure NPS, and it is quite hard for companies to come up with something that really measures customer centricity accurately. And so I think part of it is we don't have a good metric for customer centricity. But even at NPS, it's interesting to me. A lot of companies do thousands and thousands, both on the B2C side and the B2B side, of NPS scores, but then they never talk to the people who participated in the study. And so I worked for one company, B2B company, and they would have a conversation with everybody that participated in the study. And they actually had all their employees reach out to a combination of people who gave high ratings and people who gave low ratings, and all of the management team all had to call 5 or 10 customers and thank them for participating in the study, ask them to give a little bit of insight as to what drove their rating. And this ended up being incredibly powerful, because what it did was it connected an organization who normally never talks to the customers. I'm not talking about sales, but the rest of the organization. The customers were happy to get the follow-up, and they found that there was a lot more insight to be gained from understanding why somebody said it was positive or negative or raised an issue. And those kind of dialogues then came back into the company, and the company said, okay, well, here are 10 things we can do to improve the customer experience from the Net Promoter Score, because a lot of people do the survey and it's just a benchmark to see where we are versus last year. But really, shouldn't it be a lot more? Shouldn't it be more around, how do we improve the customer experience rather than a benchmark? And let's get everybody in the company talking to customers and engage with them. So I thought that was a very interesting evolution of Net Promoter Score in terms of making a company more customer centric. I talked to some departments in companies, they've never ever talked to a customer, never mind seen one. So how do you have a finance department that's customer centric when they've never talked to a customer, or any department if they have no visibility to it? So in my mind, everybody should have some level of engagement with the customer. If not, by de facto, they probably can't or don't know how to be customer centric.
Yeah, absolutely. And from what I've seen as well, communication is so important. So what you're talking about there is going out and reaching out, communicating with your customers as a result of the data that comes back for NPS. But also, I think we're all in agreement here that the leadership need to be bought in for anything to happen for an organization to become customer centric. But how that internal communication drills down into every department. You mentioned the finance department, could be compliance, could be some other departments that never deal with customers. So how that is communicated across the organization and how it's sold, it's almost selling to make sure that they understand the importance of it. I think that is essential to really drilling down that when the leadership are on board, that's the next stage. And then measuring it, of course, at the end.
And it's funny, Mark, because when I was at Staples, we looked at the biggest drivers of dissatisfaction and account churn, in the office products industry, and the biggest one by far was how returns are handled. So they were spending huge amounts of money marketing to customers and huge amount of money sending them gifts and events and all this kind of stuff, and yet they've got this Achilles heel called returns that's driving huge dissatisfaction and so forth. But the Achilles heel is lost in the back of the bus, right? It's lost in finance, in operations, and so forth. So marketing is driving, net new acquisition and account penetration and all this stuff, right? But the thing that's driving the customers away is something that's in the back of the bus. It's in operations, and the operations people don't think about churn. And the finance people who are, could be really nasty to customers around collecting bills, they've got to do that. That's part of their job. But, they are actually engaging with customers in ways that's critical to the organization, but also really important in terms of churn and really important in terms of developing an experience. So how can someone who's collecting late bills have have a positive relationship with the customer after they go through that process, instead of really teeing off the customer and making them churn. So I think that we think in some ways that these people have no involvement in customers, so therefore why train them? But when you really look at it, a lot of times they may have more involvement and more impact than some of the customer-facing functions that we spend all our time and money on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think just to add to that, Mike, I think that's an excellent point. And we are at Workhuman doing workshops, experience workshops for all employees, particularly because of this. And we're asking them to think of everybody that they deliver a deliverable to as a customer. So you have internal customers and you have external customers, and the experience that we deliver to both should be the same differentiated high level of experience, creating moments that matter, that leave a lasting impression and help to drive towards loyalty and advocacy. So I think going through that workshop with that lens of having people realize for themselves, they have a moment of insight as to, wow, I'm involved in external customers in this way, and I am delivering to external customers and internal customers in these ways. And this is how I can make small changes to be more in line with our experience goals and objectives, to really bring it to life for them. But I think that is an absolutely critical piece. That, as well as then bringing back to those areas of the business who do not have direct impact with the customer every day, they're not customer facing every day, bring back the positive and the opportunities to them so that they can see that they are an important part in delivering the experience and how they impact positively and where the opportunities are, both internal and external customers.
Thank you very much, Alice. So we're just going to open up to the floor here. We've got one question that's come in from the audience. So how important is getting the balance between human interactions and digital interactions to get a great overall experience? I know that's quite a broad question, but is there anyone that would like to answer that one?
Well, I could take it on.
Yeah.
I would say, let's say, for instance, you go and you buy an airline ticket on somewhere. And let's say you show up at the airport with that ticket and there's something wrong with it. At that moment, it's critical that you get the digital and the real life together on the same page. Because sometimes, you find these people, maybe they're not trained to handle it. Maybe it was an innocent mistake, but do you penalize the customer and send them home, or do you work with them to try to accommodate a mistake they may have made in the digital world? I know that's happened to me a few times where I've just messed up or hit the wrong button on some kind of digital thing. It happens a lot of times where if you can't talk to someone human, it's really frustrating. And I've run into that with Amazon. I've run into that with banking and other things. For instance, Amazon sent me a package and they said the package was delivered. And I was like, I'd never received it. Well, then you couldn't even interact with a human. The only thing you could do is write to them, and they'd say, oh, wait a week and see what happens. I couldn't wait a week. I had to order another one because it was time sensitive. And it turned out I never did receive that package, and they never did refund my money, even though I told them, I said, I never received it. It's kind of like, you want that digital, you got to have the human as well. Otherwise, you're just dealing with some sort of, faceless, humanless edifice. And I hope that Amazon doesn't go down that path to where there's no person to talk to.
So it's the balance,
that's my
and that's for any organization as well, right? Yeah.
My 2 cents.
Yeah, Mark, building on that, I mean, there are many organizations that are highly successful that have no customer service, no physical support at all. Think about organizations. LinkedIn is very much like that. Yeah, they'll sell you stuff, and things like that. But if you want to talk to someone there, forget it. These organizations, their model is completely digital, non-touch. They're a platform, and the only case they'll engage with you is to sell you corporate packages of some kind or other. You look at it and you say, maybe the digital experience is their experience, and maybe that's how they progress, and that's what they are. The other thing to keep in mind is that there's an interesting crossover now between the personal experience, be it either phone or face-to-face, and digital, and there's a lot of intelligent bots and other things like that that can be highly effective. Sometimes you don't know whether you're talking to an intelligent bot or a person behind the bot. But either ways, there are technologies that can be immediate and can be extremely helpful and can be staffed much more efficiently. That's very helpful. So it's the crossover between digital and technology via intelligent bots. So it's kind of a changing world from that perspective.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. I think how we look at it for our company is, what is the right experience? What is going to create the right experience? So we've actually chosen intentionally not to move to voice recognition, IVR services for customer service, because from our customer's perspective, we understand that it's most important to get to a live human fast when they call us. So that is what we do. And although that might be a little more expensive, the things that we can do to drive down the need to call by surprising and delight and using technologies to deliver a great experience for a majority of the time through our product, then we don't need them to call so much because they're not having to. But when they do, then the right thing to do in our case is to have a human answer the phone fast. So I think the balance is, again, going back to the original comment at the beginning around putting the customer at the center. I think if you look at it in that way, then that will guide you as to what the right balance is.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Alice. So in that case, I would like to wrap up there. Thank you so much to each of you for presenting today, taking the time out. So thank you, Alice, Michael, Mark, and to all of our delegates, attendees today. As I said at the beginning, this is the start of a webinar series. So there's a series of 4 other webinars are taking place this week. So if you'd like to sign up, please visit our website. The webinars link is there. And if any of you would like to reach out and speak to any of our presenters, please feel free to get in touch, and I'll make sure to put them in touch with you. So thanks very much again, and I'll speak to you soon.